like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners regular meeting for July 26, 2017. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Tonight is a pretty special night for us. Every year we get to celebrate the winners of the Bill Chapman Awards, Scholarship Awards, and we are joined tonight by the recipients and their families. So we will get to that part of the meeting shortly, but in the meantime, I'd like to have the winners of this scholarship just stand. You don't have to come forward, and start the Pledge of Allegiance for us, and then we all jump in after that, so you will help us begin the Pledge of Allegiance this evening. Start, and we'll go from there. All right, we have a couple of housekeeping items to do before we bring you all up here and congratulate you. So first is there a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Rogers. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we can move forward with the agenda. Citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on agenda items only? All right, not seeing anyone, we're going to move on to approving some of our consent items. Is there a motion to move the consent items listed in your agenda into the record?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Andrus, second by Commissioner Rogers. Those items include the Board of Commissioners regular meeting minutes of June 28, the engineers report for the month of June, Pool Advisory Board for May 9 and June 13, the police report for the month of June, the HTMA monthly budget report for May, the HTMA meeting minutes for May 9, the Calmer Fire Company monthly report for June, the North Penn Water Authority minutes of May 23, the Park and Rec minutes of June 2017, the Treasurer's report of June, and bills paid and unpaid for July 2016. Paid bills in the amount of $143,559.82, and unpaid bills in the amount of $312,627.23. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of moving those into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those are moved into the record. All right, Hatfield Township Chapman Scholarship Awards. Sergeant Detective Jay Cirillo and Detective Rich Hoffner, if you would join us over at the podium and announce the recipients.
Good evening. Thanks for having us again. If I could have the scholarship recipients come on up and join me. Okay, this is actually the 12th year. Kind of struck me. Chief, could you join us as well? Kind of struck me. This is the 12th year we've been doing this. It's a great thing. One of the great announcements I have for tonight is due to a sizable donation by Bill's mom and his stepfather, the Sheets and Chapman family. We are able to double the size of this scholarship this year and beyond from 500 to 1,000. I know 500 doesn't go too far, so you're the first recipients to get $1,000. So congratulations on that. Detective Hoffner is going to give a brief, just kind of layout of what the scholarship is. I serve as the president of the scholarship, and these are some other board members. I had the chief join us. The chief and Bill Chapman were almost best friends, so it's appropriate for him to join us in this. So Rich will lay it out, and then I'll give you a little bit about each of the applicants.
Good evening. Tonight we're pleased to have the opportunity to publicly recognize the recipients of the 2017 Officer William J. Chapman Memorial Scholarship Fund. We are honored to have some of Chapman's family here with us for this occasion. Jack Sheets is standing here with us. And to talk about the scholarship, it's in its 12th year, as Jay Cirillo said. It honors our colleague, who was a Hatfield Township police officer for 15 years, until his death in 2005 from a serious illness. Officer Chapman, or Bill as we all called him, was not just an exemplary police officer, but he was also an extraordinary man. Those of us fortunate enough to call him a friend remember his kindness, his loyalty, tireless optimism, and his remarkable sense of humor. Those who met him because of his professionalism Remember a sincere and fair officer whose efforts never strayed from serving our community with dedication and benevolence. To honor Bill and continue his legacy, we came up with this scholarship that we founded in 2005. We could think of no better way to cultivate the ideals held by Bill than by assisting students who have chosen a career that personally invests their efforts and talents back into their community. Graduating high school seniors seeking an undergraduate degree in a public service-oriented field such as criminal justice, education, or social work are eligible to apply for our scholarship. The students being acknowledged tonight exemplify the spirit of the scholarship. While we are very impressed with their scholastic accomplishments, they distinguish themselves through their outstanding personal achievements and their commitments to community service. Officer Chapman will be proud of these extraordinary young adults receiving the scholarship bearing his name. Congratulations to each of you, and thank you for helping us to honor our friend. Thank you.
As I said to each of the recipients, we could talk all night about them. Their accomplishments are unbelievable. So we identified a few things in each of their bios just so you can get a feel for them, and then we'll get a picture with you, okay? So we'll start with Mary Ann Pavlik. She's joined tonight by her mom, her dad, and her brother. Mary Ann's a Hatfield resident and graduated North Penn High School. While attending North Penn, Mary Ann was involved in North Penn cross country, North Penn track and field, where she was a varsity letter earner and also played Montgomery United Soccer Club. Mary Ann received Distinguished Honor Roll, GPA Recognition Award, and the Clee Club Service Award. But Mary Ann's very passionate about teaching young children. Over the past 3 years, she's participated in child development classes, preschool laboratory programs, and finally this year did her studies work with AM Culp located in Hatfield Township. Mary Ann will be attending Millersville University in the fall, pursuing a degree in early childhood education. Congratulations. A side note, Mary Ann went to AM Culp and then went back there to be a student teacher. Did that make you feel old? A little bit? Okay. Our next recipient is Gaurav Shinde. He's a graduate of North Penn High School. While attending North Penn, Gaurav was involved with the Key Club, the National Honor Society, Student Government Association, Computer Programming Club, and the Indian Cultural Association. He received awards for Distinguished Honor Roll, Perfect Attendance, Best in Class Spanish Student Award, and for volunteering the most service hours through the Key Club. Gaurav was worked with North Wales Library as a volunteer and also helped with Red Cross blood drives. He will be attending Temple University in the fall, majoring in pre-medicine with hopes of getting involved in the medical field. Congratulations. And our final recipient that's going to get recognized tonight is Madeline Payne. She's joined tonight by her mother and her father. Madeline's also graduated North Penn High School. While attending North Penn, she was involved as the Key Club Vice President, National Honor Society, French National Honor Society and French Club, Link Leader, and the Best Buddies Club. One of Madeline's most notable accomplishments, which really impacted the board, was her being recognized as American Red Cross Montgomery County Hero Award. This started in her sophomore year when she went to the dollar store and bought 50 personal care items for homeless people. She went down to Love Park in Philadelphia on Christmas Day in her sophomore year and gave these items to 50 homeless people. This impacted her and she decided she wanted to do more. So in her junior year, she reached out to the North Penn School District and the school and was able to basically have a fund drive and have people bring in, and she generated 500 items. And she went again back down to Love Park on that Christmas Day. This past year, Madeline's concept grew again, and she was able to double her donation, impacting that many more homeless people going down to Love Park in Philadelphia again. Very impressive, very impressive. Madeline will be attending University of Pittsburgh in the fall, pursuing a degree in social services or education. Congratulations. So we, again, have a plaque. The chief allows us to hang these plaques in the lobby of the police department with your names on them. They'll be up there with the other 11 years' worth of recipients. Want to thank Aaron and the Board of Commissioners for allowing us to come out and recognize these recipients. It obviously means a lot to the Chapman Sheets family as well as the police officers that are standing up here. So it means a lot. We appreciate that, Aaron. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm Tom Zipfel. I'm president of the board of Hatfield Township, and the reason I came down is to just say a couple of extra remarks. What you're receiving tonight is our highest award in Hatfield Township. It is named after one of the most beloved police officers to ever serve for Hatfield Township, and it was created to recognize the best, and the best in our township and just generally in the area. So on behalf of the board, I'm here to say congratulations not only on winning this scholarship, but also for all of the things that you've done for so many years to excel and kind of be recognized for the wonderful things you've been able to do. You've done many things in your life that, you know, in a short period of time that others would take a lifetime to achieve. You should be very proud of that. Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, you should also be very proud. And so one of the things that we like to do is take photographs to memorialize these. So if you would also join the police officers up front for photographs. Oh. Again, on behalf of the entire board, congratulations.
We're going to come right up on here.
Stand, we get everybody in a picture. Might have to grab a chair. How'd you like it?
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I just mentioned to one of the recipient's brothers that because she won, he has to be nice to her for a week. 1 full week, bud. Sorry, it's in the proclamation, it's in the rules. All right. Not nearly as exciting, but still definitely important. Julie, and I mean that from, I take that serious when I say that. Julie Davis has been kind enough to come to us again this year with our 2016 audit review, and she's with Dunlap and Associates.
Yep, this is pretty exciting.
I think next year we're going to give you an award.
Well, we've reached a milestone with your audit report. I don't know if you noticed, but if you go to the very last page, it hit 100 pages. So that's a first for me.
It depends what the numbers in between say.
101 pages.
Oh.
Yep. So let's get started. Page 1. All right, so I'm going to blow through this because nobody wants 101 pages of audit report read to them. And if you have any questions, just let me know. So starting with page 1, for real. The first 3 pages are the auditor's opinion on the report, and it is a clean opinion. Okay, so that's what we want. That's wonderful. And we'll move on. Pages 4 through 14 are the management discussion and analysis pages, which are written by you. So again, we're going to skip those. And we're going to go to page 15. So page 15, 16, and 17 are the first set of financial statements, which I explain each year, are the full accrual set of financial statements where you have all your government activities collapsed into one column next to your business type activities, which is the pool. And then this is on a full accrual basis, which means you see your long-term assets, your long-term liabilities, all in one, so you get a good total overall picture of how the township looked at the end of the year. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the second set of statements, which begins on page 18. And these are the fund financial statements, which are the presentation that you're used to seeing, the financial information in fund columns. On page 21, we have the statement of revenues and expenses. Just looking at the general fund, the revenues for 2016 in the general fund were 10 million versus 9.4 the year before. Had some tax increases in your taxes, not the millage, but in the earned income tax and transfer tax and things like that. Charges for services were way up. There's a lot of building activity during the year. Expenses actually went down from the prior year. So overall for the year, the general fund had a better performance in 16 than it did in 15. So that's what we like to see. Overall for all the funds in 16, the revenue rose from 11.8 million in 15 to 12.5 million in 16, and overall the change in fund balances increased 593,000, which was also an improvement over 15. So, good year. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move to page 25, which is the pool revenue and expense. So the pool, actually, the revenues in 16 went down a little bit. I think there was a change in the fee structures and stuff. So that was that. And then starting on page 29 are the notes to the financial statements. These go until page 80. And 15 of these pages are your pension note. So the notes are actually very informative. When I look at a financial statement, I go right to the notes because they tell you a lot about what went on in the township or the entity, and it really explains well, how things are recognized and how things are recorded. So if you had some free time, that's where I would go. I am not going over these in any detail. Like I said, the notes do contain 15 pages of information on your pension funds, should you be interested in that. And then moving to page 81, still talking about pensions, we have all these new required supplementary information pages regarding the pension plan. Even more information, more than you ever wanted to know. And then the rest of the statement just has some budget to actual comparisons and some more detail on the smaller funds if you were inclined to look at those. So that's 101 pages, really fast. Any questions?
Not a question as much as just a thumbnail sketch of this. It can be summed up with revenue was up. We didn't have a tax increase, but thankfully revenues were up for different services that were provided and growth inside the township, and that expenses from the prior year were down.
Yep.
And our pension is, I know we can take a look at it when we get a chance, we'll take a look at this and forward any questions to you directly, but the pension just generally, can you kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of how that is?
The pension is, if you look at page 81 and 82, down near the bottom of the page, you have a plan net position as a percentage of total liability. And you have a 3-year comparison there. So on the police pension plan, your net assets were 82% of the liability. So it's underfunded. Almost all pensions are underfunded at this point. But it did get better from 15. It went from 81 to 82. So that's good. The non-uniform one on the next page is at 96% for 16. That went down a little bit, but still 96% is pretty good. Pretty good. So, so they're doing okay. You know, most pensions in Pennsylvania, unfortunately, are underfunded. So, but yeah, you're not in distress. So,
Okay, 95% sounds pretty darn good.
95% is pretty darn good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the police got better. So, you know, that's going in the right direction.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Anything else for us?
No, you have the two letters there. The one letter is the communication where we talked about our responsibility as the auditor, and we would disclose to you if there were any difficulties or problems encountered in the audit, which there were not. There's nothing disclosed. There's also a summary at the end of that letter of adjustments we made to the financial statements. Nothing major there. And then the other letter talks about recommendations for improving some controls, and I'm pretty sure most of them have been addressed at this point. So all of them have been addressed, or they're in the works at this point. So nothing major.
Okay. Overall, it sounds like good marks.
Yep, good marks.
All right. Any other questions, comments? If we have any follow-up, we will have Aaron reach out for you directly after we review these. We say it each year. Thank you very much for coming out and giving us the, the overview.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
All right. One last special item, and that is Peter Simone from Simone Collins, who's going to give us an update on the Clemens Park Master Site Plan draft presentation.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm going to give you an abbreviated presentation from what we gave to the public a few weeks ago, and mention that our firm, along with Frens and Frens Restoration Architects and Brian McAdam from CKS, gave us some very critical assistance in putting this together. And it's also the result of working with this committee over the last several months, who provided a lot of input. We had a lot of discussion, and I think we're at a good point with this draft plan. We are in the middle now of a 2-month draft plan review process, so we welcome and anticipate changes and comments to make the plan better. Our project scope included a public survey to get people's opinions, did the obligatory background information, site analysis, worked closely with your Parks and Recreation Director, Ashley O'Neill, and other staff, and looked into what facilities are needed, what activities happen at the park, developed cost estimates, maintenance parameters, and produced the report, which hopefully you have and you're starting to review, because we'd certainly like to get the board's comments as we go through this draft plan review process. I mentioned we've been working for several months. This is where we are in the process. So we go back to our committee on September 6th, hopefully with all the comments, make changes, and come back to the public at a public meeting on October 19th. So that's the remaining part of our schedule going forward. The site itself, I know you're familiar with it. With the recent addition of the Nolan property, is about 17 acres. We have a couple of existing soccer fields. We've got a cricket pitch, existing parking you can see. We've got a basin that was done several years ago when the housing subdivision was done. It's not up to its potential, and we tried to explore that in the master plan. We have an existing access driveway that goes through the basin to the park site, existing parking, and the Nolan property with a couple of, with a house and a barn and some outbuildings. One of the first things we did with the committee and the public is we just did brainstorming and looked at goals for the park, facts, what existing conditions are, and concepts. And a lot of the concepts, and we've highlighted a few here, if you look at the draft plan, you'll see that the plan sprung directly from committee input and public input. And a lot of the suggestions, most of the suggestions that were made through the process made a lot of sense, and we tried to incorporate as many of those as possible in the draft plan. And these included both facilities and facilities to accommodate various programs in the park. Our public opinion survey, I think it's always interesting, and we have some of the results here. You can read some of these. I won't read them all to you. I think the bottom one, 74% of all the people who responded felt that parks are very important to the well-being and quality of life in Hatfield. And I think we're seeing that in more and more communities, that people really value the parks that local government provides and feel it's an integral part of life and adds to the quality of life in the community. Another one that I thought was interesting is 70% of respondents walked, run, or biked on area trails. I think that's a very positive number. And 94% of households participated in some recreational activities in and around Hatfield. So you've got an active community. An active community is a healthy community, which has all the benefits that you know about. So I think that was very interesting. We looked at which parks that your residents used, and you can see Clemens was pretty high up on the percentage of people who responded to the survey, which parks they used. We also looked at trips to households, and we broke that down into age cohorts to see what ages are going to your parks. And then what are the activities? And as in most communities, walking and jogging is very high. Swimming is high here because you have a great pool facility, of course, and you can see the other results. And then I think something that's should be gratifying to the board, I hope, is what people's opinions are of the maintenance that is done at your public parks. And you can see here that most people felt that the maintenance is done very well. About 66% of people felt that it was either very well done or well done, and I think that's a credit to your Public Works Department and John Wolf's work and other staff's work. We don't always get results that positive in all communities, so hopefully you feel good about that. And then what facilities should be considered in Clemens Park, and they go from the mundane to benches to restrooms. Public restrooms are always a challenge to provide in any park, but I think folks want to have public restrooms here, and you can see the other things. So we took all this into account as we did the survey. We've had about 211 responses through June 29th. That's going to remain open. We can get other responses, so if you haven't taken the survey, please do. And if any of you haven't taken it, please do, and it'll remain open for a while. One of the things we were tasked to do was assess the existing Nolan farmhouse and barn that was recently acquired by the Township. And here we brought in a very good team member, Frens and Frens Restoration Architects. They specialize in the restoration of historic structures and the evaluation of historic structures. And they completed a pretty thorough assessment of the house and barn. And even though it's a charming house, and we met with Jim Nolan, learned about the history of the house and his family. Even though it's a charming house, we did not recommend adaptive reuse for public use. If the Township was to retain this structure, it would be best continued to be used as a residence. The barn is of marginal value. It might be some short-term value for storage, but it's a structure that's not remarkable. It's just a very utilitarian structure. So we also looked at the other outbuildings. So again, our draft plan doesn't include retention of the barn because we didn't think it was primary or even secondary to the park's function. And so the master plan implies a removal of these structures and reuse of that ground for park and recreational use. We developed through the process 4 different concepts, and I won't go through all of these, but they included elements like the soccer fields, baseball or softball fields, retention of the cricket pitch, which we know is a very popular activity, an important activity in the community. We looked at spray pools. Parking is one of the necessary evils for a park. Even though you're creating a green space, you have to give somebody a place to park. Right now, there's about 71 spaces in the park. We know when you have events and even big athletic events, you're using the parking across the street at the auction house. So all the options looked at increasing parking in different ways. And based upon input from the public, which again was very valuable, and from the committee, we made changes to get to a pre-draft plan that looked at parking along the left-hand side here, I guess the western side, and then finally that evolved into this draft master plan, which creates a new multi-purpose soccer/football field. We suggest a new entry over what was the Nolan property, with parking at the lower area and a drop-off, a pedestrian drop-off, pavilion, bathroom, large playground, trails throughout the park, which you can see, and then parking along the left-hand side of the park. You can see the statistics up here. Also reworking that whole detention basin. Again, aesthetically and functionally, it really wasn't up to, it's really not up to its potential. Working with CKS engineers, they gave us some information about the needed capacity for a large storm event, and that would be retained in what we're calling the step pool area here, where we would bring water in as it comes in now and step it down through a series of basins in the park, but also create a permanent wet pond in the park, which is both an aesthetic and functional feature. We would have a well that would feed this pond when it gets dry. You could use the pond for a source for irrigation water to irrigate these fields if you're going to reinvest in recreating these fields and improving them. We think irrigation is in the context of the whole park, it's a nominal investment, but one that's really valuable because, as you know, injuries on sports fields are usually due to hard surfaces that compact, and if you're irrigating it, you can keep those surfaces nice and pliable even in dry times in the summer. So that's the overall park. The other thing we've tried to do is both with the existing residences, respect their privacy and provide some buffering, and also with Michelle Nolan's property, which is here, provide only a passive sort of open meadow here and provide a berm and landscaping to buffer that residence from the park, so she will not be negatively impacted by the activity in the park. You can see here we show active areas and passive areas, so they're sort of separated by use. But I think this is a park that will function well for both people who are involved in active sports activities, but also if somebody wanted to come out and walk along the pond, you could have fishing activities, creates habitat, different habitats. There's very different habitats for the step pool area and the pond. And the other thing this does, and working with CKS, we're really excited about this, is you have MS4 stormwater requirements, water quality requirements that are mandated by the state and federal government. They're very hard to fund. We think we can help you attain a lot of those MS4 requirements through the design features of this park and fund it through park funding through different grants, which I'll talk about in a minute. So you have to comply with these MS4 things. This is a way to do it. You did it in the past when you revegetated the basin, but I think this will give you additional opportunities in addition to creating a really beautiful and very functional park. And again, these are just close-ups of the new entry, playground area, bathroom, etc. We also are suggesting a spray pool, which was talked about a lot with the public and the committee as a small water feature apart from your big pool facility, but a small area that would also be a civic space. It'd be a zero-depth fountain, so when the water's not on in the cold months, it functions as a little civic plaza. Circulation and drop-off works very simply here, so that parents bring kids, can bring them, drop off, and circulate out of the park very safely. And you can see some of the components. We want to have an inclusive playground. This is a more ambitious a spray park than probably you'd provide here. If you look in the master plan, there's some photos of more simple ones that are just fountains coming up from the ground. The new sports fields were able to include a full-size baseball and a softball, a Little League field, and the difference from the existing park is with this new configuration and reorienting them, you're able to use both baseball, softball fields at the same time. Right now they face each other, and actually one of them is in the incorrect solar orientation. DCNR, who partially funded this, as you know, requires proper solar orientation. So instead of having only one baseball field you can use at a time, you have two. And with the addition of the two soccer and then the cricket pitch area, which you see here. The wet pond and step pool with maybe an overlook here, paths around it, and also the large BMP step pool area that would handle most stormwater events. And these are just examples of a wet pond. This is actually one we did in Tredyffrin Township. It was put in about 13 years ago. It's a little bit bigger than the one we're proposing here. Functioned very well, continues to function well, and this is similar in that this is an irrigation source for 7 sports fields. And then that BMP area with step pools will be a more natural or very natural looking feature. In terms of the hydrology, you can see how we've conceptualized the stormwater management and the drainage, which you'd get into in more detail during detailed design and engineering. And also one thing that's very important is accessibility for people with mobility problems. And you can see the purple lines show everywhere where folks with disabilities could circulate through the park. All those paths will meet handicap gradient standards. So it's going to be a fully accessible park. In terms of implementation, we've broken the park into 3 phases. This may be a point of discussion you will want to get into if you have comments about this, but our thinking was you could leave the entire park functioning as it is and do phase 1 first, which is the new entry, the new parking, the new athletic field. Once that's done, once that is completed, you could do phase 2, and then do phase 3 with the basins as the 3rd phase. They work pretty independently of each other. There'll be a little bit of overlap, but we think this phasing will work very cleanly. In terms of costs, our first phase is estimated at $1.3 million. Second phase is just over $1 million, and the 3rd phase at about $630,000. So we have a total project cost of $3 million, just over $3 million for the whole project. We don't suggest that you're going to do this all at once. I think in the master plan report we suggest you might do this over 5 to 7 years, approximately, depending on your funding success. I think the opportunity here is with the MS4 benefits that you get, and with some of the other features. I think this will be an attractive park to fund for both DCNR, DCED. We might even go after Penvest money, Penvest funds, water quality enhancements for projects in the Commonwealth. So I think, again, the reason you do this plan is so you can attract funding, and I think this would have a good chance of having success over a period of years to attract that funding. And these are some of the funding sources. So again, we're in the 60-day review period. I certainly try to answer any questions you have tonight. Certainly love to get more detailed questions or suggestions from the board members and the public via email, and we welcome any suggestions to improve where we are at this point.
Peter, I have a quick question about utility as far as one or more of the fields goes. A number of people have come to me and asked if the multi-purpose fields would allow for lacrosse to be played on them. I assume that is true.
I believe we're at the size where we can accommodate that. I will double check. I'm not sure offhand.
Okay, it's usually typically in the same size of a soccer field, so it's not
Yeah,
all that different.
I believe it is.
But I did have enough people who asked me that I thought it was worthy of asking you.
Yeah, definitely. And lacrosse, as you know, is one of those sports that's really on the rise.
Yep.
Peter, that survey is still available. That'll be live until September, was it 30th?
I think so. Commissioner. I don't remember what we said, but it's live now, so.
Yeah.
Certainly encourage people to keep
Yes.
taking it.
It's on Hatfield Township's website.
Yeah, if you just
On the
go to,
Township's website, yeah. HatfieldTownship.org.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
okay, and let me just respond by saying the reason we are suggesting the basins last, one of the things you always have to do during a construction project is have a temporary sedimentation basin. And the existing basin makes a good area for that, because once you have, that would function well for both Phase 1 and Phase 2, because when you're done construction and where we show 1 and 2, then you go into the basin, and as you're reconstructing it, you clean it out.
Yes, sir.
It's an old rate control basin, but it was planted with naturalized vegetation a few years ago, so it met the last round of MS4 requirements, or helped meet those requirements in this watershed. As you're probably aware, new requirements are coming out, or are out, and the township has a new application period, and the bar is always being raised, so we feel that we can, this plan will help the township meet those requirements in this watershed. Yeah. No, I think we have plenty of volume control without the step pools. I think the idea of the step pools is to catch sediment, to aerate water, to cleanse it, to introduce BMPs, to introduce different types of vegetation in that area that will help meet some of those MS4 requirements. We haven't gotten into detail. We've had some good conversations with the township engineer about how that would work in concept, and I think the charge would be, assuming this goes forward, to more detailed design on those things. Yes. Absolutely, and I think there are other things that we could do in the park in terms of other smaller BMPs, just to even add to that. And again, that will come with the detailed design. I think this is just a great opportunity for the township that will help the township meet those requirements.
All right. Any other questions, comments? No? Peter, I guess what we will, first off, thank you very much for all the hard work that you've put into this and all the meetings that you've attended and you've been a part of, and not here, but also back at the office, not just here, I should say. It really looks like we have, given this, there's a lot of opportunities for us to think about. And then I guess we will see you, was it September 6th?
Yeah,
There-
I think it's the 6th, yes.
I
at
think
the
it's
committee.
September 6th.
Correct.
And then in the meantime, if any residents have any questions, they can always get on the website, forward it to the township, or just contact one of us, and we can reach out for you if we have any questions specifically.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks again to the township for selecting our team. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions, everyone. All right. With that, we're going to move on to our committee reports. The first one is the Planning and Zoning Committee. Commissioner Rogers.
The Waters Farm rezone notice consideration is scheduled for our next, our first meeting in September 13th.
Right. Public Works Committee, Vice President Hughes.
All I have tonight is to introduce Brian to update us on the stormwater management.
Evening. As you're aware, the township is a permit holder for the NPDES MS4 program, and applications are due September 16th for the next round of permitting. It's a 5-year permit cycle. So the reason for the presentation tonight is that there's primarily two major components that were introduced with this permit cycle, and I just wanted to try to, as briefly as I can, and as, thank you, okay. As briefly as I can and as without as much technical jargon, kind of roll through what the new components that are being introduced and how we plan to address them, and let the public know that the plans that are being prepared will be available for viewing. They'll be advertised on or about August 2nd, and they will be available at the township for 30 days for public review. So with this permit cycle, there are the two components are the TMDL and the PRP plans. TMDL plans were a part of the previous permit cycle, but with this round, the DEP basically, I think the best way to describe it is refined and further defined the requirements. So what that meant for the township and for obviously all of the other municipalities is basically an update to what you have in terms of pollution, sediment pollution control, and the various requirements that applied specifically to Hatfield. TMDL stands for total maximum daily load, and with this permit cycle, DEP has made specific determinations for what the responsibilities are for the township. With the previous permit cycle, there were numbers out, and the municipalities, through their consultants, worked through some numbers, submitted what everybody felt was their best effort. Now that the state has had a couple of years to look through everything, they've said, all right, well, we see this, this, and this, and we need to narrow it down a little bit. Basically what that did was it provided us with a little bit better sense for where exactly they needed us to be, and as a result, they're requiring that a minimum reduction of 10% of the sediment that's allocated to each of the respective watersheds in the township is reduced by 10% over the course of the 5-year permit period. Other introduction with this permit cycle is what's called a PRP, a pollution reduction plan. Pollution reduction plan primarily handles nutrient loading, and it is new to us at least, and kind of the way it was explained to me by the engineers that are crunching all the numbers is that the way DEP is allowing municipalities to address it is that they want you to reduce 5% of the total phosphorus loading in the streams by 5%. My understanding is it's kind of difficult to do that, or at least it's not very financially feasible right now. An alternate approach is if you reduce 10% of the sediment in that particular watershed, you'll get credit for that phosphorus loading. We chose to handle it through that approach, and what that did for Hatfield is the phosphorus requirement is in the Skippack Creek watershed, which is give or take 25% of the township. The other 75% of the township is in the Neshaminy Creek watershed that's split into 3 sub-watersheds, and the previous permit cycle only addressed really 2 of those sub-watersheds. They were smaller. I want to say we kind of got a pass on the largest area, but for all intents and purposes with the previous permit cycle, that's how it worked. With this permit cycle, because of the phosphorus loading requirement and because of the alternate method to reduce the sediment loading, as a credit sort of for the phosphorus loading, that other sub-watershed now has to be analyzed. So it was an additional component for the township that we didn't really have before. So we went through the calculations, and that we felt that for the Neshaminy Creek, I mentioned that there are 3 sub-watersheds. The first 2 are the smaller of the 3. And what we were able to do is you can get credit for projects that you've previously done, thankfully. So since 2003, we've taken a look at all of the small projects. When people come in for pool permits, building additions, so on and so forth, they have to do small stormwater measures. So we're able to take credit for those. The other 2 programs that the township is active with and will continue to be active with is inlet cleaning and street sweeping. That'll continue. I've spoken with John Wolf about that several times over the course of the years, and John and his guys do a great job with it. That will continue, and the good news is the township does get credit for that. It's not something that you're doing just because you have to. It's kind of nice because it needs to be done anyway, but it does count towards these requirements. Those things will all continue in those 2 sub-watersheds. Based on our calculations, we feel that you will meet your requirements for the 2018 permit period in those 2 sub-watersheds. In the largest of the 3, township has, with 2 of the 3 basins that we naturalized already. We get credit for those. John and his crew have also naturalized 3 other basins. We get credit for those. Also, as I mentioned, we've taken into consideration some of the small projects that were done. In order to meet the requirements for the next permit period in this sub-watershed, we're including the street sweeping and inlet cleaning, but we need to introduce some other projects. One of the ways we can get credit for sediment reduction is through stream bank stabilization. Another is from tree planting, and we're also proposing naturalizing 3 additional township-owned basins. One thing to keep in mind that's actually quite important is we are only proposing projects that are on township-owned property. It makes it difficult, and it's apparent in the Skipback Creek watershed in particular. When you have a limitation on the amount of area that the township owns, there's only so much you can do. So that's what prompted us to choose stream bank stabilization, because quite a bit of the township's open space is along streams. And I would say roughly almost every stream in the municipality could use some stream bank stabilization. So it was an effective way to achieve some of the goals that are set. It is a lot. There's a lot to be done. But we feel that with the proposed projects, we can meet the requirements. In the Skipback Creek, as with the other watersheds, we've taken credit for the projects that have previously been done. And we are proposing, as Mr. Simone mentioned, we're proposing the enhancement of the basin at Clemens Park. We're also taking credit for the small projects that we anticipate will be coming, as well as the street sweeping and inlet cleaning. If you recall, one of the presentations a month or 2, maybe 3 ago, we talked about 2 other programs that the township could participate in. One of them is specifically for the Skipback Creek watershed. Being a part of that group, we're able to take credit for a reduction based on some methodology that was developed. We're taking credit for that, but it also allows us to say to DEP, we can't, with these projects, we're using up pretty much every bit of area that we feel like we can in the Skipback Creek watershed of the township. No other room left on public property. Can't meet the rest of the requirement. But because we're part of the group, any projects that are proposed as part of that group, the township will get credit for. The way we're preparing the application and the plan is to say, look, we are active with this group and we anticipate being able to meet the requirements, but it's still a work in progress. And as I just mentioned, because of being part of the Skipback Creek Watershed Group, we get those credits. And the group has already had a couple meetings. I believe Aaron was at one of them. Our representative is at every one and reports back as to progress. Again, actively working on how to address all of these requirements. So, at this point in time, where we're at is we need to let you know that the plan will be here, available for review at the Township, available for public comment. Any public comment that we receive, we're required to submit with the application. We'll be finalizing the application between now and September 16th, upon which time we'll need Aaron to sign it and submit it. The important part that I really have to mention is that by signing the application, the Township is committing to the plan and to following through with the projects that have been proposed. At this point in time, everything is conceptual. We do not have anything specific. I don't have hard dollar numbers for you. It's primarily just concepts. The nice thing is, as things evolve, we can change the plan. Basically, would re-advertise public notice and resubmit a different plan to the town, to the state. But we feel that what we have right now is about the best we're going to be able to do based on the limited area that we have available and the types of projects that we can fit within those areas. So apart from what's on the slides, again, I felt it was probably most important to let you know that there's a lot of work to get to where we're at. It is still evolving to some degree, and that we have from now till September 16th, but we will need a commitment from the Township to move forward with it.
I have a quick question. What is the major source of phosphorus? Is it rainwater, or are there other means of it getting into the water?
It's nutrients. I don't want to misspeak, but I suspect it would be fertilizer, primarily fertilizers, probably other naturally occurring stuff that gets into the waters. But I believe from various sources that that's primarily what's happening. And I apologize. At the next meeting, I will make sure to have better information for you. One of the things that I was told was not necessarily where the phosphorus is coming from, but that it's part of the concern with the phosphorus requirements and nutrient removal requirements is that it was applied on a statewide basis. And it's something that probably wouldn't be bad for municipalities to address, but the other group that the Township joined in to try to address some of these requirements on a global basis with Mr. Hall and the other municipalities in the area is partly how the requirements for phosphorus and nutrient removal have been created. There's again, I don't want to misspeak, but bottom line is it's not as narrowed down, I guess is the best way to say it, as the sediment loading requirements are. It's probably something that has evolved, just like a lot of stuff with stormwater management has. And as it evolves, it's identified as a problem, and then everybody kind of gets to work to address problem, how much of a problem, let's dial it in a little bit more, because we can have a global requirement, but if you live in, picking an area, you live in Pittsburgh, it might be different from Scranton, might be different from Philly, might be different from Hatfield. And so as the process evolves, that will come clearer, but for now, this is what we're dealing with. But I will get a better sense for where is it coming. I could even respond to Aaron, and he can distribute to the board exactly, what they feel is really creating the nutrient problems.
There aren't any problems in Pittsburgh, just for the record.
I was going there next. There are big differences between Pittsburgh and Hatfield.
Mark goes to that Iron City beer.
Problem in Pittsburgh left a few years ago when you came here.
That's your problem.
That's right, that's right. So procedurally, what we have is a 30-day time frame for public comment
Yes.
till roughly September 2nd.
Right.
We have a meeting on September 13th. That's about
Correct.
right? And then we would have to submit the application by the 16th. So really, our last public conversation with regard to this would be on September 13th.
Yeah,
To the extent that anyone had any questions, comments, or otherwise, but at that point, the application is in its final stages.
yeah, at that point, yeah. We're almost stapling everything together. But yes, that we have until then,
Okay,
at worst.
right.
So none of these programs are funded by the state? They'll be funded by local taxpayer dollars?
At this point, yes. However, as we've done, when we feel that there are grants available, we will certainly go after them hard. And keep our fingers crossed. The unfortunate part is that we put together, I think we're putting together a dozen of these for our various clients. As you can imagine, every municipality in the state is doing this. So I suspect, as has been the case in years past, that there will be funding available. It's just going to be, our initial impression is everybody's going to look, be trying to get part of that kitty. So having, with the Clements Park Basin, the nice part is there is a master plan that promotes redo, so to speak, of that basin. That will help. Since we've been dialing this all in, we're getting a better sense for what we think can be done. So you're not just going to DEP with hat in hand and saying, hey, we need a couple of bucks. We'll be able to more effectively put together grant applications as they come up. But right now, you're on your own.
So on our own, so that means we have to start some program by what calendar year?
I will discuss some dollars with Aaron between now and the middle of September and get a better handle on what we think needs to be set aside.
Starting, so you're saying in 2018 you have to start spending money?
Yes.
Yes.
Certification that we're submitting the application for is a 5-year period of time?
That's correct. The idea being that what is proposed will be completed over the course of the 5 years.
Over those 5 years?
Yeah.
And is there other obligations associated with certain percentages of completion over the 5 years, or is it really at the discretion of the municipality?
Well, at this point, I believe the understanding is that if you put it on paper, you say, all right, we're going to do, just picking numbers, we're going to do these 8 projects.
Right.
They're going to meet the 10% reduction of sediment that we have to. That the anticipation is those will be either completed in that 5-year period or damn close.
Right.
They're not getting out there like with a calendar and saying, whoa, hey, you should have been done, get no more funding or whatever. It's my experience with the people that I've spoken with at DEP is they understand that implementation of this program is difficult because it's one thing to write the requirements, it's another thing for the municipalities to handle it on a day-by-day basis. Permitting requirements come up, you got to figure out how you're going to take care of it. Similarly, you can't just wave a wand and make the projects happen. DEP does understand that, and I think that our experience so far is that they've generally been pretty flexible about, not holding your feet to the fire with very, very strict timeframes.
So let's just pretend for a moment there's a 5-year time frame and we don't meet it. What happens?
Sure. That hasn't, to my knowledge, that question hasn't been posed. I think from the meetings that we're at, it's generally pretty friendly and conversational, and I think with that kind of question, even though it's a valid question, I think a lot of people in our shoes are afraid to ask because it almost seems like you're kind of testing, like, so what if we don't do it? It's kind of like, I think the people on the other side of the table are almost afraid to answer because they don't want to tell you, well, we can't do anything. Everybody's on their honor, because, that just kind of opens the door for people to say, yeah, we tried really hard. So quite honestly, it's really a matter of everybody submits the applications with the best intentions and understanding that, you're a permit holder in the Commonwealth and there's expectations, and if you don't, I'm not sure that anybody's pushed it, quite frankly. Because right now, I mean, one of the reasons that the program has evolved the way it has is that there were a set of guidelines set up, whatever it was, 10, 12 years ago when the program started, and there were expectations about public participation and they got to the point where like, well, you keep reporting every year that you're doing it, but we're not seeing results. You got to start showing us. Show us meeting minutes. Okay, well, said you were going to do street sweeping. Well, how much stuff are you removing? How many times are you doing it? You can't just say you're doing it. So that's the way the program has evolved. It hasn't really, to my knowledge, hasn't been a matter of a sediment cop coming around and saying, you know, so you're going to the Hooskow, Hatfield.
From street sweeping perspective, do you street sweep only those streets with curbs, or you street sweep everything?
That's a good question.
If you're street sweeping like Cowpath,
Yep.
that's all washing off, so you're pretty much just
almost
nothing, right?
I'd have to ask John, to be frank. My understanding is he sweeps all the streets. I mean, it just certainly makes sense that you're going to get more bang for your buck sweeping the streets with curb. But I kind of feel stupid. I never asked him. We sweep all the streets, and I never asked for a, specific, oh, what about the streets without curb?
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, sir, could you just go to the microphone,
you-
just so when people are watching this, they can hear you, if you don't mind the microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So as I said a little bit ago, I used to work for DEP, and I helped to write this permit package that's here for the 2018 to 2023 permit cycle. I'm actually writing PRPs and TMDL plans for several clients of my own. I left DEP. I work for the Center for Watershed Protection now. And really, I just wanted to, first and foremost, come here to say, I've worked at DEP, and because of conflict of interest, I was never able to be in an environmental advisory council. And I don't know if you guys have ever explored having a group that could help to organize projects or to work with, selecting which projects would have the best bang for their buck and working with the adaptive management that will continue forward during the permit term. I'm not sure, just wanted to plant that seed of thought. I would love to participate and to be involved. I have trained lots of people on how to review plans. I write plans, stormwater design. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Do you live here in Hatfield?
I do, and I've lived here for a year. I really enjoy it here, and I would
Welcome,
just
by
love
the
to be
way.
able to try to help out. My daughter and I, just as a quick little aside, we take full advantage of the parks around here all the time, and we love it.
Welcome. We don't get a lot of people to come to our meetings, especially and provide us substantive input. So thank you
good.
for coming up. Actually, one of the things we ask is if people could just give us their name and where they live when they come up to the podium, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. So my name is Mike Hickman. I live in the Hatfield Village Apartments,
Okay.
2058 Maple Avenue.
Great.
Yeah. So I wanted to plant the seed of thought of that. I would love to be able to help out in however capacity. Just understanding the DEP perspective. I've participated in EPA audits. I've done audits of MS4s. So just throwing it out there for whatever that's worth. The woman before, I can't help but to, as a water resources engineer, the woman before asked about where phosphorus comes from. All stormwater runoff is modeled as having a phosphorus and a sediment and a nitrogen component, and it's inherent in the organic matter, and it's bound to the sediment. So if you have sediment, you're going to have phosphorus associated with it, and that's where that 10% reduction that's associated with the 5% reduction comes from. That's where those numbers were generated from. The gentleman before was asking about street sweeping. I fought hard so that PA could have credit for sweeping streets that have curb and gutter or without. So you're free to choose whichever you want. If you do sweep it, you should take credit for it though, but the credits are based on a frequency. So you have to do it a lot, and I'm sure you know that. You can't just sweep a couple times and get very much credit. You have to do it a lot, right? But the 5-year time frame. That is going to be in your permit. You're going to have an individual permit because you discharge to TMDLs. It's going to be written in there that you're going to need to meet that in 5 years. Now, whether or not anybody actively pursues you as a sediment police officer to hold you accountable, but one thing that I always advise my clients about and that I think people should consider is the fact that there are the EPA and there is third parties groups who go and just look to make sure that people are doing what they're doing. So you will say in that permit that you will need to meet the reductions in 5 years. It doesn't say you have to use exactly the suite of BMPs that you would propose, just like the gentleman said, but it will say that the reduction numbers that you need to meet as a minimum will need to be taken care of in 5 years.
Okay.
I couldn't help but just
No, that's great. Thank you for the input.
Information on the fundraising aspect of this?
What? I'm sorry?
Any information on the fundraising aspect of this? 'Cause
So what you spoke of before, so when I started at DEP, which was in 2013, which was year 10, the program started in 2003, I started in the second permit cycle. And what everybody called this was the unfunded mandate. That's what the nickname for this program was entirely. And
Not
it's,
only this program, there's many programs like that.
So it remains that way. And while there is some grant opportunities that exist in other places through the DEP, the William Penn work that's going on, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but we work a lot with them too, and as with the Center for Watershed Protection. There are other opportunities with other entities. So there's NIFWIF, who Horsham had a grant actually through them.
Get those suggestions off camera so we can keep them to ourselves.
So there are various pots of money, but everybody is trying to figure out how to fund this. And I'm just going to say a very, very bad phrase, which I'm sure nobody's really excited to hear, but a lot of people are exploring utilities. Stormwater utility, where you charge a fee of some kind to handle all of the extra funds that you have to do for your operation and maintenance, for your street sweepers, for your pipes, your inlets, but also for new BMPs.
That's why I pay state taxes. I think they ought to take care of it.
But as I said, I am just a new resident here. I really enjoy it. Wanted to make sure that you guys knew about, I have a card I'll be happy to share with you guys. And if you've ever, want to have some kind of committee that helps to work through this for the next 5 years, be very interested in pursuing that.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Any other comments, questions? Tough to act to follow right there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, we really have got a couple of experts, Brian and this gentleman here. I followed on the phosphorus piece, but that was about it. We got it. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, then first off, Brian, thank you very much for not only for the first round, that first application, but now dragging us across almost what is the finish line of the application process for the second round, or is this the third round?
As I'm thinking about this,
Third round, right? Yeah.
my kids were in grade school when this started, and they're all out of high school now.
It's telling. It's telling. Thank you very much. Great job. All right, so we're going to move on to, unless, Larry, you have anything else?
I don't have anything else, thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to Park and Recreation Committee, Commissioner, I almost said Thinis, Commissioner Thomas. I just figured I'd pull in an old name.
At least it wasn't
Been doing
Brown.
it, that's right, we've been doing it for weeks now. We're bringing back all the old clan.
I have a fairly short report tonight, so. Our Music Feast Summer Concert Series is continuing. We did have a concert on Monday, which did not get rained out, but rain did affect us, but it was a great concert, needless to say. So we continue. Our next one is Monday, August 7th, and that is Southern Edge, which is a country band. And Monday, August 21st is Real Diamond, which is a Neil Diamond cover band. So come on out and join us. Get your hot dogs, chips. Yep. Yes, we do. We have probably 500 to 600 people that show up for those concerts. So, the 8th annual Dash and Splash 5K race is going to happen on Wednesday, August 16th. Registration and check-in will be at 5 p.m. The 5K race will start at 7 p.m. sharp. Children can participate in the Kids Fun Run. The Kids Fun Run will start at 6:45 sharp. For more information and registration, please visit runtheday.com. The Hatfield Aquatic Center will close at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, August 16th for the Dash and Splash. And so take advantage of our new software and register online for Hatfield Aquatic Center if you want to get in for the rest of the summer. And Nature Camp is coming up. Join us this summer for the Nature Camp. Camp runs Monday, August 21st through Friday, August 25th. Camp is held at School Road Park from 9 a.m. to 11 each day. However, on Thursday, August 24th, camp will run from 9 to 3 p.m., and that's to allow the kids to go on an all-day field trip. The program is $25 for residents and $35 for non-residents. Spaces are limited, so register now at hatfieldrec.com. And Get Fit series, we're offering a variety of fitness classes throughout the week. Aqua Exercise is currently running on Mondays and Wednesdays at 7 p.m., Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. You can register for that at hatfieldrec.com. And there's a 10, 20, or 30 class option, and you receive your punch card at the Aquatic Center to start attending classes. And lastly, look for new classes in our Get Fit series this fall. They won't be in the water. We've got Zumbini, parents and children, and yoga and wake up call. So that is all I have this evening.
All right. We're going to jump right to Public Safety Committee. We have an item there. We have to update our and establish a police officer eligibility list, which is always good to have on hand as needed. That is a kind of a housekeeping item that our Civil Service Commission asks us to do from time to time. And so, having said that, I'll entertain a motion to commence that process to establish a police officer eligibility list for the Civil Service Commission. Is there such a motion? Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Thomas. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that motion is approved, and Civil Service Commission can begin their process just to create an eligibility list. That's all that this does. Next is Finance Committee. Commissioner Andrus.
So Julia gave the abridged version. We're now going to go through this report.
Line by line.
There's no finance report. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our action items. We have a few. Our first is with regard to a cost share agreement with the North Penn Water Authority Durstein Road Paving and Pipe Replacement Project. Is there a motion for approval so that we can begin the conversation?
So moved.
Motion by Vice President Hughes.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rogers. Aaron, I'm not sure if, I think you're handling this?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. North Penn Water Authority is about to undertake a project to replace and also install a water line pipe along Durstein Road. Portions of this, there is a current pipe which they're upgrading. Other portions, there is not a water line in this part of Hatfield Township. So when the township was notified from the water authority that they will be tearing into the road and putting in a new pipe along the red line you see there at Durstein, Township Public Works staff believed that that section of Durstein needed to be repaved. So rather than having the authority just repave half of the road, which is a requirement when any utility has to open the road, we decided to enter into discussion about repaving the entire portion of that section of Durstein. Since the 2017 road program, the bids came in well under what we have budgeted. There is enough room without going over what has already been planned for road paving for 17. So we are entering into an agreement with North Penn Water Authority. I'm asking the board to approve execution of this document, which means that the township and the authority will split the cost of repaving Durstein Road from Funks to Elroy. So while the new water line comes in, after it'll be repaved, curb to curb, restriped, and the cost to pave and stripe will be split between the authority and the township.
And so if I follow the agreement, the language of the agreement, this is still, just like every other project, going to be publicly bid.
will be bid by the Water Authority.
By the Water
So
Authority.
we're going to piggyback off of that bid. The authority will pay for the costs of the project. The township will reimburse the authority for half of the cost of the paving and line striping.
Right, okay. I just wanted to clarify for those who are watching that this still is going to go through the public bidding process for the for the roadway improvement that we're discussing.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Adam?
It's just a stone that they use. It depends on what quarry the stone comes out of. Once the tar starts to wear off of it, the stone shows through. So it's, it'll be black when it goes down, and depending on what color stone they use, it'll be the color it ends up at after a few years.
It depends on the low bidder and, like Commissioner Hughes said, the quarry they use. So we'll find out in a few years.
Yeah.
All right.
Surprise. But Commissioners, maybe, it's red on the map. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be red. But Commissioner, just a good example of intermunicipal cooperation between the authority and the township. This is something that could happen where pipe goes in without communicating to the township. Then we have half of a road that's new, and then certainly residents would feel it as they drive down there. So just a good example of good communication between the two entities and working together.
All right. Sounds good. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. All right, our next action item is with regard to the Fricks Trail Improvements, Montco 2040 grant. Is there a motion to award the bid to Oliveri and Associates?
You did.
Okay. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Commissioner Thomas. Aaron, I think you've got this one as well.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do. We have talked about this project at length over the past few years. Just one thing is worth pointing out is that Hatfield was the first recipient of this Montco 2040 in the county, which was a new grant program that just began a few years ago. Township received $100,000 from Montgomery County to improve the walkability and recreation components, which we're utilizing to improve Fricks Trail. So we talked about the components that were bid for this, which are the pedestrian crossing, flashing, the flasher on our villa, new sidewalks along Maple, so that when you're leaving our trail behind Chestnut, behind the Aquatic Center, you won't be on Maple Avenue, you'll actually be on sidewalks, as well as some additional markings. So the low bidder, McMahon, put the bid specs out for us last week. We opened the bid. We had two bidders, and the low bidder, which the reason I have the language on this not to exceed $170,000 is after discussing this with our consultants at McMahon, we think that we can still remove some of the cost of that because we do have $100,000 budgeted. We have a $100,000 grant, well enough to absorb this. But however, we have a lot of additional components to this trail that we're going to need to fund next year as CKS leads us through the permitting process again at DEP to cross some of the wetlands along that trail route. So there's going to be some additional costs to put in boardwalks or whatever else is required. So the goal is to reduce this $170,000 by another $20,000 to $30,000, which we think we can. So we'd like to award the bid to not to exceed, with the expectation the final project cost will be less than what we're awarding the bid for tonight. I just want to make you aware of that. But more than obviously well over half of this will be funded through the grant, which will make safer, the trail. It will help with pedestrians crossing our villa. It will also help with the safety of the Maple Avenue portion of it as well. So we are looking forward. We've talked about this trail many times for many years, and we are getting very close. And O'Brien's doing a fantastic job working on the permitting end through DEP. Anton's working on our other end with the the traffic component of it. So it's certainly a team effort, and we're getting close. I will not even come close to saying when we think the trail will be completed, because I've been wrong the last 15 times I've said it out loud. But we're seeing progress now, and we hope to have that up as once we get the permits, we'll be out there running and installing what we need to so the residents can use this trail.
So from a financial perspective, we allocated $100,000
Calendar year.
for this calendar year. 100 of this 170 is from the county, and you're saying we're going to only have to allocate maybe 30 or 40,000. So we're going to be good to budget between $60,000 and $70,000 for this calendar year, which will apply to next year's work?
Correct. And next year, we'll have a better feel, as we go through the budget season in the fall, we'll have a better understanding on the cost of the boardwalks that we'll need to install next year. So we may have to increase the funding, but please remember too, not a dollar of Hatfield Township taxpayer money has been spent on this trail. Certainly, the $100,000 grant is coming from Montgomery County taxpayers. We understand we're all part of that. But the additional 100 that we've budgeted was not taxpayer money. It was private dollars that were contributed toward this project. So we have yet to reach that threshold, and we hope we don't, but we'll see as we go.
Private donors for the environment?
We are always seeking private donors at all times for anything.
Putting up the first buck, Jer?
I might.
Every dollar counts.
Right. All right, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion to award the bid as described in the agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. All right, our third action item is Resolution 17-13. Is there a motion for approval with regard to the Cowpath or Villa realignment grant opportunity for the DCED? Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Rogers. Aaron, I think you have this one as well.
Sure, thanks, Mr. President. Another project we've talked about maybe 25 times over the last few years. So as everyone knows, we have a grant application in right now with PennDOT for the total cost of realigning Cowpath or Villa. We heard that we were going to hear the grant awards in April. Then they said no, most likely May, definitely by June, July, and now they're saying late August. So we have yet to hear the results of that grant. So we're playing this safe because we have a deadline to apply for DCED, which is the Department of Community Economic Development, which the township received $280,000 from last year to help us design this intersection. So we're going back to DCED with an application for just the acquisition of all of the right-of-way, right, which we've talked about, 3 homes as well as a few other things. The reason being is because this grant has a 30% match, which is significantly higher than the PennDOT match. So total cost would be higher than what we are comfortable with and what we have in our Act 209 impact fund. So if we get the PennDOT grant, we withdraw from this grant immediately. However, if we get a portion of the PennDOT grant, we'll use this as a supplement and maybe put the two together to have total funding. So we're just trying to explore every opportunity that we possibly can to see this project come to completion in the next few years is what we're doing. So this is a resolution that will be attached to the application. We've done this many times. Some require it, some don't. But I'd like the board to consider approving this resolution so we can move forward for trying to get more funding for this very, very important project for a very unsafe intersection in Hatfield.
So Aaron, would the grant allow us to facilitate the purchase of those homes?
This would.
Those individuals are living in sort of limbo here, right?
Absolutely, Commissioner Andrews. Yes, either grant, if we receive the PennDOT grant, they will find relief quickly. If we receive this grant, the same for the residents of Hatfield. The 3.
For keeping them apprised of what we're doing so they're aware?
We are. They call often, and we try to communicate with them as much as we can. And they are all, and that's one of the things that that PennDOT said when they were reviewing our application was that they were impressed that we have 3 property owners that are cooperating and eager to see this. The opposite. Usually, it's more adversarial role. So that was one of many that helped our application. But we'll see.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call the question.
Got a question out on the floor.
Oh, yes.
State road.
State road.
The majority of it's a state road. There's a portion heading toward Franconia and Township line the township owns. However, regarding deer, the Game Commission does not like anyone touching the deer except the Game Commission. However, the Game Commission is not at all, always the most responsive group because they are spread rather thin. So if we do our best, regardless of a state or local road, if we have to, we will get involved. Please report, and we appreciate it. We pass it along to the proper agencies and see it go. Oh, okay, good, very good. Very good. Well, thank you for your help. I understand. It is, the majority of it, yes.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 17-13, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that resolution is approved. Next is a tax relief for volunteer firefighters. To motion to advertise an ordinance that I know that, Aaron, if you'd walk us through this, and
Sure.
we'll have some discussion with regard to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, let me preface it by saying it's a really great opportunity that finally the state legislature has allowed us to be able to consider.
Exactly. Yeah, so rewind a year ago, and the same 5 Board of Commissioners passed a resolution to encourage the legislature to pass this piece of legislation that would permit local municipalities throughout the Commonwealth to provide tax relief for our volunteer firemen and firewomen. So that has happened in the meantime, thanks for the support of the Hatfield Commissioners. And now that the legislation has been enacted, as of mid-January of 17, the municipalities are in this position. So we have been crafting an ordinance over the past 4 or 5 months with the other towns in the county, trying to do this in a collaborative way so there's consistency throughout the county. We had a meeting tonight with our Finance Committee, President Zifo and Commissioner Andrus, to determine the threshold that we would like to propose to the other commissioners about providing the relief to our volunteer fire base here in Hatfield, our 2 companies, Culmer and Hatfield. So just one piece of statistic before I get into the relief itself, but in 1976, there were over 300,000 volunteer firefighters in Pennsylvania, and there are less than 72,000 now. 40 years. So obviously, if that trend continues, there will be no volunteer firefighters in not too long. So the reason for this legislation is to provide an incentive. We want people to come out and join and serve and be active volunteer firefighters and serve their community. And the commissioners have been behind this, since day one. And what we're proposing tonight, and looking for a motion from the board to advertise an ordinance that the board can consider adopting next month, are 2 components to this. One is the legislation allows municipalities to provide 20% tax relief from real estate taxes for municipal share only. This has nothing to do with school taxes. So we're proposing, the Finance Committee is proposing to the rest of the commissioners that we use that 20% to waive that liability from our local firefighters, as well as the earned income tax component. The Finance Committee is proposing that we have a $500 cap on what we credit towards the volunteer fire company. So what that means is for our roughly 35 active volunteer firefighters that live, now those are the ones that live in Hatfield Township that are going to most likely meet this criteria, which is being developed. So you don't just join a fire company and receive the credit. You have to be involved, you have to be active, you have to go to calls, training, and do a majority of what is needed. What the Finance Committee, led by Commissioner Andrus and President Zifo, is proposing is that if you're a volunteer firefighter in Hatfield Township and you make $100,000, you will have 0 liability of earned income tax to Hatfield Township. You also pay 20% less in real estate taxes to Hatfield Township. So we think that's a fair proposal and a generous proposal, and one that will be substantial to those volunteer firefighters. That's obviously a hypothetical. Where people fall is somewhere in between. If you make well over that, you'll pay just the difference over the 500. So this is something that will certainly provide possibly an incentive, but also an appreciation from the commissioners to the volunteer firemen, for all the volunteer firefighters, to all the for all the service that they do for Hatfield. So those are the 2 components that will be in this ordinance. It's essentially the 2 tax relief items, as well as the criteria in order to qualify. There's going to be more to it. There's going to be a process involved. We're working on that. But next month, I would like the board to consider adopting this, so then we can have it in place for the fall, and then in the new year, the firefighters will be able to apply for that credit through both the earned income collector and the real estate collector, which is through the township. So that is what's being proposed. Commissioner Andrus, go ahead.
I want to point out that Commissioner Rogers brought this up, I think, last year, because he brought legislation to us to consider. So very thoughtful, and thank you very much. And the incentive for the income tax is only on the 0.5% portion. Had that clarification in earlier at 6 o'clock, and I'm not sure you mentioned it.
Right, so the half, yeah, everyone pays 1%, half goes to the school, half comes to the township. So if you make $100,000, you will not pay the township a dime in earned income tax every year. Thank you.
All right. This is a great way for us to say thank you to our volunteer firemen. Is there any other questions or comments? Commissioner Andrews, would you like to make the motion to advertise the ordinance as described by Aaron?
Bob should, it was his idea.
Yeah, that's Bob.
Bob?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. So
I
moved.
second.
Mr. Rogers, Commissioner Andrews is a second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of that motion to advertise the ordinance as described, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is approved. All right, that is great news. And then, Aaron, that'll be up for consideration at our next meeting?
Next month, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, our last action item is an HTMA board appointment. Those of you might remember that unfortunately we lost a long-term member of the HTMA, and there's an open position, and pending on our agenda tonight is a motion to appoint George Landis to complete the term expiring on December 31st of 2017. So I'll make the motion to appoint Mr. Landis to complete that term. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, a second by Commissioner Rogers. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of that appointment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that appointment is approved. All right, we're going to move on to our Township Manager's report. Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one item to go over with the commissioners tonight, and it's similar themed to the previous items that we talked about. And this grant is another one that the township has had significant success with over the years. Township actually received the largest grant throughout the state in 2012 through the ARLI, which is the Automated Red Light Enforcement Grant. Township received almost $900,000 in funding in 2012. So we have continued to apply for other traffic-related projects throughout the township since, but given the fact that we received a pretty good number, not sure when we'll be next in line to receive any more, but the township, as in the past few years, this year has applied for funding for a traffic signal at Durstein and Cowpath, which has met the warrants based on the traffic count and the traffic engineers for years. And I know the residents in that area are very eager to see some movement on this project. And Commissioner Hughes has supported it and certainly relayed a lot of the feedback from his constituents there regarding this intersection for many years. So this application does not need a resolution. This is more of a heads up that the application is going in like it has in the past few years, and I'll certainly let the board know when we hear back from the grantors for this project. But that's all I have, Mr. President.
All right. Solicitor's report. John. All right. That's kind of good to hear. No offense, but good to hear. Last, citizens' comments. Any other citizens' comments? All right. Seeing no one run up to the podium, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks for coming out, everyone.